Hey guys, Chris here from Carolot Farm. Today is the second day that we have had Lady on the farm, and I want to start off today by talking a little about what we're feeding her, and then we'll go into our routine and some pasture updates. But first things first, it's time to make their breakfast. Whenever you start to switch a horse's grain from, one particular grain to say a new grain, you want to do so gradually because horses have very sensitive digestive systems. And so with Lady, she had been getting a pound of this particular grain in the morning and in the evenings at the rescue, but it's not a grain that I have been feeding. I've been feeding Triple Crown Senior to both Sweetheart and Rocky. And what I'm doing now is I'm going to start by giving her, 3/4 of this cup filled with her original food and a little bit of the new food. And then over the next week, I will just slowly increase the new food as I decrease her old food. And then eventually we'll just have her totally switched over and it should be pretty seamless. First morning with 3 buckets on my arm. It's a little trickier. What I want to do this morning, since I'm feeding 3 minis now, and they haven't yet been fully introduced, is I'm going to feed Lady in the ring and close her in there. And then once she is settled, I will let Sweetheart and Rocky into their feedlots and feed them. And then once they finish, I am thinking I want to turn Rocky back out with Shenanigans and Snuggles and give them some hay because they really are wanting some hay. And the grass has been drying up, I will confess to that. And then I think I might see about introducing Sweetheart and Lady first. Got my 2 matriarchs here on the farm, and I'm hopeful that they can sort of become buddies and, hang out and at least get along, not be unkind, because I could foresee in the future needing to separate out my 2 older girls and keeping the younger ones, in a different field or feeding them separately this winter if need be. So feeding hay to the youngsters and not Sweetheart is just the first step right now. But let's see how it goes today. The first step was feeding Lady here. She's very happy to have her breakfast. She is such a sweet girl. Next up, feeding Sweetheart and Rocky, letting them into the lots now. Rocky is eating, Sweetheart is eating. Shenanigans slipped through and he is eating Lady's leftover hay. And so I have allowed Snuggles to be my bucket licker, sort of like how kids like to lick the beaters from the batter. She gets to lick the bucket. Shenanigans slipped through. He is very happy to be eating hay, and so I will most definitely be giving the youngsters their hay just as soon as Rocky's finished. What a good boy. I mean, he shouldn't have slipped in, but it's just a very different morning. It's pretty peaceful right now. Everyone's eating. We've got Lady, we've got Shenanigans, who's happy as a clam with that hay. And then I do believe Sweetheart has finished up. She's in the nearest feedlot. I have to give her a little bit of medicine, but she looks really good this morning. And then Rocky's in the far feedlot. He is almost done. And then Snuggles, you can see she's still working on that bucket. I might need to go save the bucket. Whenever I am beginning to introduce a new horse to the herd, I really want to strive to get everyone as settled as possible for the day. And that's why I've given everyone breakfast. And once everyone is finished eating, Lady, she might take a while. I actually don't know how long it takes her to eat that pound of food. But once everyone is finished, then I will start to slowly do the introductions. Like I mentioned, I'm going to start, I think, with Sweetheart, because I would like for these 2 ladies, older ladies, to kind of get to know each other, because I definitely think that they are going to have some feeding turnout routines that might overlap, and so I will introduce them first. But again, breakfast was a really high priority for everyone, just to get their minds settled, their bellies settled, and then we'll move on to the next phase of the day. I'm happy to report that Sweetheart here is seeming much better today. She's had a couple really good mornings. Yesterday she was still just a little, bubbly on the mouth. But today she looks really, really good, so I'm very happy for that. Yesterday morning, however, our little friend Shenanigans came in very, very slobbery. He had that beard of bubbles, he was drooling a lot, and I did suspect with him, though, that it was probably from clover. And as I went out into my fields and did a little more inspecting, I did find lots of short clover patches. And there is a chance that clover has been playing a role in Sweetheart's slobbers and her beards of bubbles. But I think because of her asthma, it has only been compounded, which is why we've had some other breathing issues with her associated with it. But this little guy, no slobbers this morning, happy to report. Another thing that's a little different on the farm, we've had kind of a busy weekend, and it's only Sunday morning, is we have sectioned off our back field here. The horses still have access from the newest side field all the way over here to our run-in, because I did want to make sure that everyone had shelter. It's very important. So they do have access to the run-in, but we have sectioned off the back field because on Friday I had lunch with a good friend. She's our local feed specialist, and I was talking to her a little bit about Sweetheart's condition and her slobbers, and my friend asked about our pastures because I had said, well, it could have been an environmental piece too that, was flaring her asthma. And so my friend mentioned a couple of weeds to come home and look for. And I found a few of them in our back field here. And so we have sectioned off this particular part of the field, and we are going to spray to go ahead and kill all of those weeds. But it was recommended that we actually keep our minis off of this field until everything is really brown and dried up, all of the weeds that is, because some horses are predisposed to wanting to eat them in that wilted state, which can actually make them even more toxic. So we're kind of down to like 2 paddocks, a barnyard, and this little run-in. So we're limiting their grazing, but I think it's gonna all work out just fine. So this is the weed I was telling you. This is called white vervain, and it has been known to cause issues with livestock, and we do want to go ahead and eradicate that from the paddock. You can see we have a few little sprigs of it that are popping up. It looks like mint. It's in the mint family, but you can see here next to this white vervain, I also have a patch of clover. So my horses are definitely nibbling on some of this short clover, but we want to make sure they aren't nibbling on these other weeds that could have a toxicity to them. And so we're going to spray and do our very best to eradicate these. Taking a look at this back paddock, I don't see a lot of that white vervain. It tends to pop up in the shaded areas, which this paddock does have a fair amount of morning shade, but it seems to really only be up here in this top corner. But we're going to go ahead and spray the whole field just to be safe. Now, clover is also considered a weed, and when we spray for the white vervain, it will also kill the clover, which means we might have fewer drooling episodes, which isn't a bad thing, but the clover might be one of the greener things out in my field, and so there is a chance that once we treat this field, there'll be hardly anything remaining. Again, it's more weed than grass, and I've kind of always suspected that, but it's been a pretty good little grazing paddock or pasture for my minis. So we'll have to just kind of see how hard of a hit this grazing zone takes. As everyone munches on their hay, I decided to go ahead and let Rocky into the barnyard with Shenanigans to graze, well, to nibble on hay. Sweetheart is very relaxed in the feedlot with the boys close by. And then Lady, I see, has finished eating down in the ring. This way the boys are also a little closer, and it's just helping to very quietly and softly introduce them a bit further. Now that Lady has finished eating, I want to start our introductions, and I will begin with Sweetheart. I brought Sweetheart down here with my shank on her, but she really is very uninterested in meeting Lady. And I would say the same for Lady. I mean, she is just standing here and has not really made any motion to come farther forward. So I'm gonna give them a couple minutes and then I'm just gonna open the gate. They'll have plenty of room, and I will certainly stay close by though. I don't want these two old ladies to get to running too much today. Hoping it'll be very quiet. Sweetheart has just walked away from Lady here, and I'm gonna go ahead and open the gate. And so we've got Lady walking up to Sweetheart, who is not going to want her to come anywhere near her other little friends. Sweetheart is the more dominant mare that I have, but I am hoping that these two will just be able to work it out and then, you know, coexist together. They don't have to be best friends, but it might take a little time. My sweet girl, you're so sweet. I'm so sorry she's not being nice. I do know from past experience that Sweetheart is very protective of her herd, and introducing a new horse can be a little stressful for her. And then we have Lady, who is just so smart. She's like, I'm just gonna walk away from that. Very smart little girl. Decided to take a little morning nap. Now we're down flat out for a nap. She seems peaceful. I think she is truly just taking a little morning nap. It's been a long time since she had the ability to really lay in the grass. So I think she's really just enjoying it. Being a horse out in nature. Now she's perked up. I roused her, but I was a little questioning, but I was pretty sure she was just comfortably resting. Such a sweet girl. Being a Sweetheart just had no interest in Lady or Lady in her, we're going to see if maybe Shenanigans can befriend our newest addition here. I'm hoping he might venture out there and say hi. He's usually game for most anything, and he's just kind and gentle and pretty easygoing, good-natured. We'll see. It's a little like having an organized play date. We're gonna set this friend up with this friend. They both need to make friends. Shenanigans is very happy to eat these last few morsels of hay, but he does keep kind of looking off to Lady every now and then. You know, she has not moved a muscle out there in the ring, but I'm hoping that once he finishes nibbling, he'll head on down there and we'll have some quiet introductions, I'm hoping. Quiet introductions are not a bad thing. You know, sometimes you get horses who get really excited and all fired up. But that does not seem to be what we are experiencing today. And as a horse owner, I'm pretty happy about that. I am more than happy for the horses to take their time and to stay calm and not get overly excited. That's when horses tend to get hurt during introductions. So I'm totally happy with taking it slow today. Now, that being said, when I tried to introduce Sweetheart and Lady, and the two of them really had nothing to do with each other and were just staying far apart, I decided to go ahead, put Sweetheart down with Snuggles in the back, and then I let Shenanigans in because I really do want to work towards integrating Lady into the group. And so Shenanigans here, although he is, you know, kind of pushing the issue, he is doing so very gently. And when Lady told him to kind of back off there, he did. But I can't fault him, and I'm glad to see that he is still continuing to try to make those introductions because, you know, he's doing what I'm hoping for. I'm trying to build these connections gently and slowly, but that is what we're striving to do. Lady wanted nothing to do with Shenanigans, but because everything was so quiet, I did let Rocky in, and he came over and he looked at her and she looked at him, and then he decided he'd rather go hang out with Shenanigans. Lady is still choosing to hang out here by herself in the barnyard, but she's very wisely standing over here in the shade. So, you know, if she wants to be a loner, that's totally fine. I don't mind that. You know, she's probably had quite the life. If horses could tell us their story, I'm sure they'd have all sorts of things to tell us. But she just seems very relaxed and easygoing. I would not say she's at all concerned or tense. Just happy to hang out by herself. Very independent little girl. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you've enjoyed this introduction. Lady will continue to slowly but surely integrate into the herd. So check back soon because I'm sure we'll have more updates. Bye, guys.